rid of the problem.
Well, actually, really,
decriminalise it, at least, I think.
Well, really what I want to talk about is what's going on in the darknet. This underground internet protected by all sorts of encryption that allows for everything from drug dealing and human trafficking and illegal arms deals to happen. Tom Moore from Aura is going to join us momentarily, but have either of you actually entered the darknet?
How do you get on? I don't know. How do you get on?
Well, let's find out. Tom, are you there?
Afternoon.
Yes, tell us a bit more. Enlighten us, please, about the darknet.
Well, the darknet is basically a virtual internet that sits on top of the real internet that you use every day. You simply need a specific browser on your PC to access it.
Can we assume that if anyone's on there, they're up to no good?
No, I don't think so. There are legitimate reasons to want anonymity on the internet. There are a number of countries that operate under political oppression. There is a need for free speech. There are foreign aid agencies, for example, that use it as a way of communicating. So it does have legitimate uses as well.
I ask this because the FBI has caught 5 Manchester University students selling $1 million worth of drugs, of ecstasy, ketamine and LSD to darknet users all over the world, including New Zealand. That's why we're talking about this. So how does one enforce the law through the darknet? How would you do that?
I would probably not look to the darknet to enable you to enforce the law. I mean, at the end of the day, the darknet is just a tool, and we have lots of other tools in this world, such as firearms and so on, that have legitimate uses. And the way to control those is often to control the misuse. So rather than follow something that's untraceable, like the anonymity that the darknet offers you, and with the case of drugs, for example, you've really got to follow the illegal product and its supply chain.
And encryption, I suppose, makes that more complicated or more difficult?
Well, encryption makes tracing the initial transaction more difficult, but tracing the product and the illegal substance back to the source is just a matter of having some more rigor around the postal system, for example, or the mechanisms by which we're physically transporting these things around the world.
Here's a legitimate use, Tom, that you might be interested in. I'm sure you're aware of it, that we use at Stuff Circuit, which is that we launched Secure Drop a few weeks ago, which accesses the darknet so that people can anonymously give us information and documents, and we will never know who they are.
Yep.
And we access that information through an air-gapped computer at Stuff, and that, you know, to me is an extremely legitimate use of the darknet to give people protection for important information that they want disclosed.
Yep.
So it can be an important tool for journalists. Have you used it before, Paula, or was this your first time using it?
This is our first time using it. We launched it about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago. We're getting a good steady stream of tip-offs through it.
But do you have to, if I want to tip you off about something, do I have to get onto the dark web to do
Joe.
it? All right, I'll do that, yeah.
Just wait till the mics are turned off, perhaps.
On that note of journalism, before we go, Noelle, can I please quickly commend you also and Alex Casey on the work that you've done at the spin-off over Pavement magazine. That story is excellent and
Kia ora, good evening and welcome to Checkpoint. I'm Rowan Quinn in for John Campbell. Coming up on the program tonight, Fonterra boss Teo Spearings announces he'll step down from his $8 million a year role as the company posts a $348 million half-year loss. And he's finally here. Barack Obama spends his first day in New Zealand playing golf with Sir John Key and his family at a luxury course in Northland. An Animal Law Association report says rodeos are illegal and must be banned. And the Prime Minister tells Shane Jones to pull his head in after he called for the chairman of Air New Zealand's board to resign. And revelations that controversial security firm Thompson & Clark has been monitoring at least 3 more activist groups.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. The Prime Minister has told off the New Zealand First Cabinet Minister Shane Jones after he called for the sacking of the chairman of Air New Zealand. The Regional Economic Development Minister put Air New Zealand's board and its chief executive on notice as the row over the decision to stop flying to some regional towns deepens. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Jacinda Ardern says as a major shareholder in Air New Zealand, the government has to ensure it does not overstep the mark, and Mr Jones has gone too far. She says Mr Jones listened to her and acknowledged what she was saying. Mr Jones says since this morning his comments have undergone some refinement. But while he accepts he has no authority to remove any member of the board, Mr Jones is not resiling from his criticisms of the airline. He says he sees no problem attending tomorrow's dinner for President Barack Obama, being co-hosted by Air New Zealand. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
An Animal Law Association report says rodeos are illegal and must be banned. Lawyer Katrina McLennan, who authorised the report, says the Rodeo Code of Welfare is not only flimsy and outdated, it's actually illegal according to the Animal Welfare Act.
And it allows for use of electric prods and flank straps and spurs and ropes being thrown around young calves' necks and young calves being slammed onto the ground. And if you look at the main act, it's quite clear that all of that is contrary to and banned by the main act.
Katrina McLennan's assessment matches a 2015 Internal Ministry for Primary Industries memo that said rodeos could be prosecuted if it wasn't for the Welfare Code. She's calling on the government to adhere to the law and ban rodeos. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says the report is a stunt. Rodeos are not illegal and animals are not harmed. The Associate Minister of Agriculture, Mika Whaitiri, will receive the report at Parliament at 6 o'clock, and Checkpoint will have more on this story after 5. The former President of the United States, Barack Obama, has hit the green with Sir John Key at a luxury golf course in Northland today. Mr Obama arrived by private jet at midnight and stayed at Sofitel Hotel on Auckland's waterfront before getting on a helicopter this morning to play at Kauri Cliffs Golf Course in Matori Bay. An Auckland Westpac rescue helicopter crew member, Artie Wynyard, was on duty during Mr Obama's takeoff for Northland this morning. Mr Wynyard says he scored away from one of the most famous men in the world.
Well, he's definitely someone that I never thought that I would see in the flesh. We have a lot of celebrities and VIPs that fly in and out of this space, but he's definitely someone that I wouldn't think that I'd see in my lifetime.
Artie Wynyard says Mr Obama, who was wearing a casual grey outfit and golf shoes, looked relaxed before he boarded. The chair of Fonterra says the dairy cooperative's $348 million loss has nothing to do with the chief executive's departure. John Wilson made the announcement that Teo Spearings will step down later in the year at a news conference this morning called to talk about the half-year loss. Mr Spearings has come under fire during his time at the company, and his $8 million salary drew criticism last year. But he says his next move won't be motivated by the company's profile.
My slogan for what's next is that I would like to focus on a better world rather than a bigger job. So that's one quote, if you like. Fonterra, you know that, is extremely close to my heart, and it always will be.
Outgoing Chief Executive of Fonterra, Teo Spearings. Another group is claiming to have been spied on by the security firm Thompson and Clark. Last week it was revealed the controversial firm had been hired by the state-owned claims settlement agency Southern Response to spy on quake claimants and at least one lawyer in Christchurch. Greenpeace said the firm had been hired by the Ministry for Business Innovation and Employment to monitor its activities as well. Now, Oil Free Wellington says a series of emails between the ministry and the firm reveals it has been monitoring its activities as well. Spokesperson Francis Mountier says it's clear the ministry has a close working relationship with the company.
MB are in contact by email with Thompson and Clark in such a fashion, like informal, calling each other mate, doing these favours for each other. They are joking and teasing to each other. So there's a close working relationship. There's also regular meetings.
Francis Mountier. The ministry says it hasn't used the firm's services since 2013. The father of a young man who died after using synthetic cannabis has delivered a petition to Parliament calling for tougher penalties for suppliers. Callum Jones, who was 22, died in September last year after battling a long addiction to synthetic drugs. His father, Lewis Jones, has collected nearly 1,200 signatures calling for harsher punishments and an inquiry into addiction services. He says the drugs are too easy accessible and there needs to be a stronger deterrent. Parliament has been considering legislation to increase the punishment for selling synthetic cannabis from a maximum of 2 years in prison to 8. It's 5:06. To sport, and there has been a sigh of relief from the Black Caps after Ross Taylor was declared fit to play in the first pink ball day-nighter cricket test against England. Taylor missed the last match of the one-day series after being sidelined with a thigh injury followed by illness. But ahead of the test starting in Auckland tomorrow, Black Caps captain Kane Williamson says the veteran batsman has been training well under lights and is an integral part of the side.
Roscoe's been playing beautifully well every time he's walked out to the crease, just the calmness at the crease, the confidence, and it's just reflected in how much success he's had this year. So it's important for us as a team that he is there and excited with his body intact to play the game come tomorrow.
Kane Williamson. Rising star Etene Nanai Seturo is a notable omission from the men's 7 squad for next month's Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in Australia. At the centre of a recent tug-of-war between New Zealand Rugby and league side the Warriors, Nanai Seturo was not included in an experienced 13-player squad named today. The New Zealand women's team, who will make their Commonwealth Games debut, features 9 of the group who claimed silver at the 2016 Rio Olympics. And the Silver Ferns netballers opened their Taini Jameson Trophy campaign against Malawi in Auckland tonight. The match is scheduled to start just after 8, with the first match of the competition between Jamaica and Fiji starting shortly after 6. And that's the news.
The Tail Gunner.
Do not poke your nose into the political boxing ring unless you're going to resign today and join the ranks of the National Party.
The High Flyer.
We've got regional airfares down 8% in the last 3 or 4 years. What we've got is a really broad coverage. We've got one of the best regional networks of any country on earth.
And the Wingman.
You can't make every route profitable in any transportation scheme, but the combination of them all together is what in the end makes the profit. So we just want them to have regard for that.
In Full Flight, morning report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, 120 of the world's top scientists are in the country writing a report on the way land use affects climate. We'll talk with co-chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And after 10, Britain's foremost palliative care specialist, Catherine Mannix, who says we need to talk about dying. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from mid-service to midnight. Tomorrow, Northland to Waikato. Also, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Gisborne. Fine spells and isolated showers. Waitomo, Taumaranui, Taupo, Taihape and Hawke's Bay are areas of cloud. A few showers, especially about the ranges during the afternoons and evenings, some heavy. Taranaki to Wellington, also wided up. Scattered showers today, mainly north of Wellington. Some will be heavy. Periods of rain tomorrow, heavy at times. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine today. Cloud and the odd shower about Nelson and the Sounds. Periods of rain tomorrow, which will be heavy at times. Canterbury and Otago, excluding Clutha, but also Bulla and Westland. Occasional rain, heavy at times with snow, lowering to 900 metres about Canterbury and Otago overnight. Clutha and Southland, rain with heavy force possible, turning to showers tonight. Fiordland, rain clearing and becoming fine this evening. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells with the chance of a shower. It is 9 minutes past 5 and you're listening to Checkpoint with Rowan Quinn.
Thank you very much, Anna. Fonterra has announced its $8 million chief executive will step down shortly after it revealed a big first half-year loss on its troubled Being Mate investment in China. Teo Spearing says his 7 years at the helm of New Zealand's biggest company have been quite a ride, and now he wants to focus on a better world, not a bigger job. And while Fonterra's chairman denies Mr Spearing's departure is linked to the dairy giant's $348 million loss, dairy farmers say it's only right Mr Spearing's is going. Anusha Bradley reports.
With the news conference about Fonterra's first half losses about to wrap up, the cooperative's chairman, John Wilson, drops a bombshell that CEO Tav Spearings is leaving.
Teo and the board have now agreed that Teo will leave us later on this year. And the board is currently in a process of shortlisting, a replacement for Teo.
As he's handed the microphone, Mr Spearings admits the moment is, quote, awkward.
I'm approaching seven year in, John. It has been quite a ride with a couple of unexpected events here and there.
These unexpected events include the 2013 botulism scare that hit Fonterra's international reputation and its pocket, with the cooperative paying damages of $170 million to its rival Danone. Then there's controversy of being revealed as New Zealand's highest paid worker last year, with an annual paycheck and bonuses worth $8.3 million. There's also the $750 million investment into the Chinese infant formula company, Being Mate, which it has now written down the value of by $405 million. Asked if he regretted that 2014 investment, Teo Spearings admits lessons have been learnt.
Yes, we have. China evolves very quickly, so to have 18.8% in a publicly listed company in China with regulations increasing pretty quickly is not the easiest. And the other learning is really that when the market changes so quickly from sales in normal retail or the old retail, the Carrefours were full of people 3 years ago, now they're empty. So the market has shifted, the channels have shifted to e-commerce very rapidly.
Fonterra's chair, John Wilson, says Mr Spearing's departure is not linked to the losses and the company will continue to invest in China. Down on the farm, though, they aren't quite so sure. Gordonton share milker Lee Holman believes it must have played a part.
Probably had his hand forced, even though that's not what they have said in the announcement. It's, a huge loss for the dairy farmers to lose that sort of amount of profit.
Alistair Morrison, a dairy farmer in Westerfield, South Canterbury, is also disappointed with Fonterra's result, although the forecast payout to suppliers has been raised by 15 cents to $6.55 a kilo of milk solids.
I'm not really into the politics of dairying. The results are more that I'm concerned about, and I suppose you can blame everybody else. No different from the All Black coach. Is it the players or the coach? I'm not sure. The players are going well, the players are good, but when they're going bad, it's the coach that's usually no good.
Teo Spearing says Fonterra is still the envy of the dairy world, but he can't commit to being CEO for the next 5 to 7 years.
And I'm not focused on what's next, but my slogan for what's next is that I would like to focus on a better world rather than a bigger job.
Fonterra says it's been carrying out an international search for a new CEO since November and is now in the process of shortlisting candidates. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
Rodeos are illegal and must be banned, a new report today from the Animal Law Association says. The 92-page report, the first of its kind in New Zealand and released just an hour ago, calls on the government to act, saying the way animals are treated at rodeos goes against the Animal Welfare Act. So the sport cannot legally continue. Zach Fleming has more.
Rodeos are illegal and
lawyer and report author Katrina McLennan is unequivocal. Rodeos are illegal, so they need to stop. In law, there's the Animal Welfare Act, and then supplementary to that, codes of welfare.
And what the rodeo code does is runs completely contrary to the Act, and it allows the use of electric prods and flank straps and spurs and ropes being thrown around young calves' necks and young calves being slammed onto the ground. And if you look at the main Act, it's quite clear that all of that is contrary to and banned by the main Act.
Essentially, the report says research shows animals are hurt in rodeos, and that goes against the Animal Welfare Act. so it doesn't matter what the Rodeo Code of Welfare says. Checkpoint first reported on this in March last year.
A senior animal welfare investigator at the Ministry for Primary Industries wrote in 2015 that if the Rodeo Code of Welfare didn't exist, rodeos would be problematic and prosecutable legally under the Animal Welfare Act.
Today's report cites overseas research as proof that rodeos are inherently cruel. It points to the sport being banned in parts of the US, Canada, Australia and Europe. Opposition from animal welfare groups, including the SPCA, as well as sponsors withdrawing, including Foodstuffs, LJ Hooker, Stuff, Meridian Energy, House of Travel, Baileys and Harcourts. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says animals enjoy participating in rodeos, and President Lyle Cox, who hadn't read the report when he agreed to be interviewed today, said he believes rodeos are not illegal and the report is a stunt.
We don't believe that's correct, and we rely on what the government has done to date, the actions of the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee in 2014, had an independent parliamentary select committee inquiry in 2016, and we believe that there are no loopholes to address.
But today's report disputes whether that 2014 review was done properly, saying the research the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, or NAWAC, uses to update codes is completely inadequate to form a scientific opinion.
Under Section 10, people have to take all reasonable steps to ensure the physical health and behavioural needs of animals are met in accordance with good practice and scientific knowledge.
The 2014 rodeo review is 11 pages long.
And it refers to 8 to 9 references. Now, I think anyone that's familiar with research will think that 9 references is really quite a small number. It just seems very flimsy to me. And, for example, one of those 9 references is a letter to the editor.
And only 3 of the 9 references were from this decade, the report says. NAWAC didn't respond to Checkpoint's request for comment. Associate Minister of Agriculture Meka Whaitiri, who earlier this month said she isn't looking at banning rodeos, said she's asked her officials to look over the report in detail, take on its recommendations
and seeing whether it obviously can enhance the directive I've given to officials specifically around rodeo practices, and so that's the level that we're wanting to make sure that the authors have been heard in terms of the concerns. And that we are actively taking on board some of the recommendations. But again, it needs to go through my officials.
Mr Cox says the Rodeo Cowboys Association will do whatever the government tells it to do. And he disputed opinion polls that found a majority of people are opposed to rodeos.
People responding to the opinion polls are swayed by incorrect information put out by the people running the polls.
So these are just people being misled?
Yeah, totally. There's a lot more people attending rodeos this year. We've had a very good season. We had a great national finals in Wanaka last weekend. National titles decided. No injured animals. Our ability to run good rodeos is right there, and we will continue to do so.
Ms McLennan won't be launching legal action of her own.
I really think it's up to the government and Parliament to make sure that laws are adhered to. I see them as being responsible for that.
Minister Whaitiri said she's already expecting a report on rodeo issues in May, and a response to today's report by the Animal Law Association could be included in that.
Whether it's before or approximately around May, we'll try and work that detail out, but rest assured there will be a full response from the government on it.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Barack Obama has spent his first day in New Zealand playing golf with Sir John Key and his family at a luxury course in Northland. Mr Obama arrived by private jet just after midnight and stayed at the Sofitel Hotel on Auckland's waterfront before getting on a helicopter this morning to play at Cody Cliffs Golf Course in Matodi Bay. Eva Corlett reports.
Well, he's definitely someone that I never thought that I would see in the flesh. We have a lot of celebrities and VIPs that fly in and out of this space, but he's definitely someone that I wouldn't think that I'd see in my lifetime.
It was a moment Westpac rescue helicopter crew member Artie Wynyard will never forget. A wave and a glimpse of one of the most famous leaders in the world on a whirlwind private visit to New Zealand. He was just lucky enough to be on duty during Barack Obama's takeoff for Northland this morning.
You could tell that something was happening because there were a lot of police. Police Eagle got airborne. Police were blocking roads, access to the port, so we knew something was going on.
Flanked by the police and his personal security staff, Mr. Obama left the Sofitel Hotel just before 9 a.m. this morning. With a helicopter circling overhead, the former president travelled in a silver car with darkened windows. The police stopped traffic to allow the convoy to make its way to a helicopter pad in Mechanics Bay, just a few kilometres along the waterfront. Artie Wynyard says crew members were alerted to Mr. Obama's arrival just 15 minutes before he showed up.
He actually turned up in a space of 2 or 3 minutes under escort. He got out of his car, through the main doors, and then straight to the helicopter. So it was pretty exciting to see something like that early in the morning.
A crowd of staff, media and others gathered at the pad, but the rescue crew with their red jackets got a special wave from the president. Mr. Wynyard says Mr. Obama, who was wearing a casual grey outfit and golf shoes, looked relaxed before he boarded.
One of our ladies that we were with commented on his swagger and the way he was quite relaxed in his dress, and he was carrying a cup of coffee. When he approached the helicopter, he shook hands with the pilot, and it was quite clear to see that Obama asked him which seat he should sit in because he pointed at the seat either in the front or the back. And that was quite funny for us to see that. From, probably one of the most powerful men in the world, and, you kind of think that he'd be able to just jump in where he wants.
The marketing manager of in-flight charters based at Mechanics Bay, Dan Burt, was also on site when Mr. Obama flew off to Matauri Bay.
They'll have a very quick trip up there today. Obviously, it's a beautiful day, and we just hope it stays like that for the rest of his visit, so he really gets to experience, our city and our country at its shining light, I guess.
Mr. Burt says the base frequently flies high-profile guests, but it's hard to beat the former President of the United States. Niria Pauruka works at the Matauri Bay Takeaways and Cafe, about 6 kilometres from the Kauri Cliffs golf course. She was excited to welcome Mr. Obama to the neighbourhood.
The whole situation's pretty cool, actually, because, we're just a little Northland, and I don't know, it gives a lot of exposure, and it's something to be kind of excited about. Not every day you have someone, an ex-president here.
The 44th President of the United States is expected to stay in the Bay of Islands at the luxury accommodation The Landing tonight, before returning to Auckland tomorrow for an official welcome led by Ngāti Whātua at Government House. There, Mr. Obama will meet briefly with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern before attending an invite-only event with more than 800 members of the business, Māori and political community, organised by the NZ-US Council and paid for by Air New Zealand, MasterCard and Westpac. New Zealand-born chef Peter Gordon has flown in from London to oversee tomorrow night's dinner. But while many would drop everything to dine with Mr. Obama, one mayor, Greg Brownless of Tauranga, will keep his commitment to attend a citizenship event instead.
If circumstances had been different, I definitely would have gone. But when you have to upset the plans of sort of 250 people, you really have to think twice about whether you can go to an event like that. That was my decision in the end. I thought, it's a once in a lifetime, but I can't really see how I can do it.
Mr. Brownless says there is an open invite to Mr. Obama to visit Mount Maunganui next time he's visiting. On Friday, Mr. Obama will meet with 20 women from the Wahine Toa Young Māori Leaders Programme before flying to Australia to meet Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and then continuing on to Japan. I tāmaki makaurau mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Eva Corlett, tēnei.
The Prime Minister's had to tell Minister Shane Jones to pull his head in after he called for the chairman of Air New Zealand's board to resign this morning. Incensed with the national airline's decision to stop flying to some regional towns and infuriated by a statement from its chairman Tony Carter yesterday telling him to butt out, Mr Jones encouraged Mr Carter, the rest of the board and the company's chief executive to resign, live on RNZ. Jacinda Ardern says her regional economic development minister was way out of line. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
No one listening to New Zealand First MP Shane Jones this morning would have been left in any doubt what he thought of Air New Zealand's board and its chief executive, Christopher Luxon.
Do not poke your nose into the political boxing ring unless you're going to resign today and join the ranks of the National Party. Chairman has written a letter, in my view, seeking to muzzle me. The board, in my view, are no longer serving a purpose that suits the entirety of New Zealand.
How many of the board need to go, in your view?
Oh, well, obviously you'd start with the chairman.
Speaking to the media on his way into Parliament this afternoon, it was clear Mr Jones had been sent for re-education.
The remarks I made this morning have gone through a process of refinement. Both Grant and the Prime Minister have said, Shane, you have a strong view as a regional provincial champion, but you have no authority to effect changes at the level of the board, and I accept that.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, described their chat.
Calling for the sacking of any board member is a step too far, and I have told Shane Jones that.
So you have given him a good telling off?
I've certainly explained to him that he is absolutely entitled to an opinion, which he has shared, but suggesting anyone from the board should go is a step too far.
But Mr Jones wasn't overcome with remorse.
Tony Carter is reportedly upset with my remarks, and he's a powerful man. He's a director on Fletcher Building. Obviously, I think he's still there on Fletcher Building after their $1 billion loss. I accept that Tony will take not an ounce of notice of what I say.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters, was asked what he made of Mr Jones saying that the board clear-out should start with Mr Carter.
Well, I haven't, because I'm not the responsible minister, I've got that sort of view. I would prefer to look at the evidence. But let's be very, very clear. The very idea that the media can question him, as I heard on Morning Report, but politicians can't, is somewhat absurd, isn't it?
In question time, Nationals leader Simon Bridges asked Jacinda Ardern what she was going to do about Shane Jones.
Will she discipline the Honourable Shane Jones for threatening the Chief Executive, the Chair and indeed the Board of a publicly listed New Zealand company?
Mr Speaker, I've shared my view with Minister Jones, but just as this isn't a sacking offence for Air New Zealand, it's not a sacking offence for Shane Jones either.
Despite the spat, Shane Jones says he will be attending a dinner with the former United States President Barack Obama in Auckland tomorrow night. Air New Zealand is one of the major sponsors of the invite-only event. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Benedict Collins.
Thompson and Clark hasn't just been paid by the government to spy on Greenpeace and earthquake claimants in Christchurch. Tonight, Checkpoint can reveal the controversial security firm has been also monitoring the activities of another 3 activist groups in Northland, Coromandel and Wellington, and the activities of at least 1 further claimant. Its activities on behalf of the government-owned claim settlement agency, Southern Response, are already the subject of an inquiry by the State Services Commission. The Commission's also been asked to consider whether the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment should be included after Greenpeace complained it had been in contact with the firm for many years. Conan Young investigates.
Oil Free Wellington found out it was being watched by Thompson and Clark when it made an official information request for emails from the firm to MB, the government department with oversight of oil and gas exploration and mining. Oil Free Wellington's Francis Mountier says while the exact nature of the security firm's relationship with MB is not revealed in the documents, what is the fact they have a very close working relationship.
MB are in contact by email with Thompson and Clark in such a fashion, like informal, calling each other mate, doing these favours for each other. They are joking and teasing to each other. When somebody at MB resigns, Thompson and Clark is so sorry to hear that, mate. So there's a close working relationship. There's also regular meetings.
MB has admitted to using the firm for security advice on how to deal with protesters at a 2013 petroleum conference, but maintains this was the last time it hired them. The emails released to Oil Free Wellington under the Official Information Act show Thompson and Clark continued after 2013 to provide MB with briefings about protest activity the group was engaging in. The emails cover the group taking to the water in kayaks to stop the oil exploration ship the Amazon Warrior from berthing in Wellington in 2016 and a protest outside a petroleum conference in New Plymouth just last year. For a firm that's not on MB's payroll, it certainly spends a lot of time corresponding with it. Oil Free Wellington received 150 pages of emails between Thompson and Clark and MB relating to it alone. 121 of those pages are redacted. Francis Mountier says another 450 pages relate to other protest groups.
We see in May 2016 Protect Karangahaki, which is a community group in the Coromandel, organised a protest at a drill rig, and as soon as they do that, Thompson and Clark, who are obviously monitoring their social media as well, send an email to MB saying we'd like to get in contact with these Australian companies in the hope that they would hire Thompson and Clark as well.
Miss Mountier says information about an unnamed Northland group was also handed to MB. Asked why it matters if a private company is watching protest groups on Facebook, she says her past experience with Thompson and Clark suggests this may not be all it's doing. In 2008, a protest group she was involved in to stop Solid Energy from developing an open-cast coal mine was infiltrated by an informant paid for by Thompson and Clark on behalf of state-owned Solid Energy.
I have no reason to believe that in the interceding decade they have stopped using those kind of methods, and despite back then both National and Labour said it was unacceptable for a state-owned enterprise to be utilising this private investigation company, we can now see that they are in extensive contact with a range of agencies.
The State Services Commission is already looking at whether Southern Response breached standards of integrity and conduct over its use of Thompson and Clark to monitor Quake claimant Cameron Preston. Mr Preston says he has information the agency spent $170,000 on the firm's services. Tonight, Checkpoint can reveal a second Quake claimant was being watched on behalf of the government agency. The man, who's asked not to be named and who we'll refer to as Brian, says his claim was placed on hold after he received a letter from Southern Response's lawyer pointing to a post he'd made to Facebook. His voice has been obscured.
Well, the general tenor was getting frustrated with them agreeing to a process and then trying to pull out of that process and then looking for other avenues to solve it. And I was searching, just casting a bit of a net out to see if anyone else was in a similar position and wanted to join together and get together some ideas on it.
He subsequently found out the Facebook post was picked up and handed on to Southern Response by Thompson and Clark. He was miffed as to why a firm dealing with security threats was being asked by his insurer to keep an eye on him.
It certainly wasn't a security threat, which is how they've framed the use of that investigating company. It would have been seen as them as possibly a litigation threat. Yeah, it was a frustrated public posting, just searching for information, and they could have come back to me and talked to me about it. But instead they took quite a defensive, litigious and almost a bullying approach.
Brian says he's awaiting further information from Southern Response on whether he's been placed on a list by Thompson and Clark of claimants who need to be watched.
When I look back at it, I go, well, they've hired a firm to look for information in response to a security threat, but then they've gathered information on my claim as a part of that, and they're using it in a different way for my claim. And the way they ended up using it was bullying to send me a lawyer's letter to effectively try and manage my claim to limit their liability.
Brian has passed his experience on to Doug Martin, who's leading the State Services Commission inquiry. Oil Free Wellington plans to join Greenpeace in asking the inquiry to be expanded to include MB's use of Thompson and Clark as well. A spokesperson for the Commission says no decision has been made over whether this will happen. Southern Response and MB declined to be interviewed until the outcome of the State Services Commission's inquiry is known. An insight into how close Southern Response was with Thompson and Clark is provided by a testimonial Gavin Clark has typed for Southern Response's former communications manager, Linda Falwasser, in her new role as a consultant. In it, the security company director says he's worked with Miss Falwasser since 2014, when she was with Southern Response and in a, quote, extremely difficult and challenging role due to external pressures placed upon the business. He says he would not hesitate in recommending her as a business advisor. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has warned ministers to make sure government departments are not hiring Thompson and Clark to spy for them. For Checkpoint, ko Konanyang tēnei.
Coming up on Checkpoint, the Prime Minister has told Shane Jones to pull his head in after he called for the chairman of Air New Zealand's board to resign. Shane Jones joins us live after 6. Pressure mounts on Facebook as authorities ask it to explain how a political research firm gained access to the personal information of 50 million Facebook users. And Wellington commuters could soon find themselves sitting next to a four-legged friend as the rules are changed to let pets travel on buses. We'd love your feedback. Don't forget you can text us on 2101 and you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us Checkpoint with John Campbell or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And now here's Anna Thomas with the headlines.
Jacinda Ardern has told Cabinet Minister Shane Jones he has gone too far in his attacks on Air New Zealand over its decision to stop flying to some regional towns. Mr Jones is not resiling from his criticism, but says that since this morning his comments have undergone some refinement. An Animal Law Association report says the government must ban rodeos. The lawyer who wrote the report says the Rodeo Code of Welfare is not only flimsy and outdated, it's actually illegal. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says the report is a stunt. The Tauranga Mayor has turned down an invitation to see Barack Obama in favour of a citizenship ceremony. The former United States President is speaking in front of 800 people in Auckland tomorrow night. Greg Browness says it's a shame to miss the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but he doesn't want to mess up the plans of more than 250 people. Another group says it's been spied on by a security firm. Last week it was revealed Thompson and Clark had been hired to spy on quake claimants and at least one lawyer in Christchurch. Now, Oil Free Wellington says emails between the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment and the firm show its activities have also been monitored. Fonterra's chairman says a $348 million loss has nothing to do with the departure of its chief executive, but some dairy farmers are sceptical, saying the loss is disappointing and must have played a part in the announcement. And a British company accused of misusing Facebook information for political gain has suspended its chief executive after footage emerged of him talking about his role in influencing politicians. Cambridge Analytica says recent comments secretly recorded by Channel 4 of its chief executive Alexander Nix do not reflect the firm's values. And those are the news headlines.
Thanks very much, Anna. And Nona Peltier is here with business. Nona, immigration's fallen to its lowest level in more than a year. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I don't. That latest statistics show us that fewer people are coming here to live, and it's a lot of it is to do with students. So we felt we had a net gain of just under 5,000 in February. That's 1,300 fewer than the month before. That's quite a, it's quite a drop. And it was the lowest monthly inflow in 3 years, which is, quite substantial. Now, that didn't really reflect too much, though, on our visitor numbers. Tourists are still coming here in large numbers. There's no slowing down there. Record 3.78 million people came here in the year to February.
Well, and now Fonterra, we've been talking about them a lot today, about the big write-downs and the departure of the Chief Executive, Teo Spearings, but we've heard a lot less about the result of that smaller specialty dairy company, Synlait.
That's right, and that really was the star performer in the market today. My goodness, that company's share price rose, well, it finished up 14%. That's like $1.14, and the reason why is that the company basically quadrupled their net profit for the first half to $40.7 million, and they've got big plans. So they produce this type of milk from dairy cattle, A2, it's called A2 milk, and A2, the milk company that markets the produce from Synlait, is now one of the largest companies in New Zealand. So the two of them together have really done some enormous, seen some enormous gains. And certainly when you think that a share price rises 14%, that's a lot in a day. And it's because of this very strong result. And we can expect more from Synlait. They want to move into consumer products, and yeah, they're doing really well. Now, even though I say that Synlait did really well, so Fonterra did too. Their share price rose more than 1% for their cooperative and also for the shareholders fund to $5.90. So it was a good day for dairy, I guess, all around.
Yeah, interesting. And what happened on the rest of the markets today?
Well, Not surprising, all of this helped gain the NZX Top 50 Index. It rose 1.4% to a record 8,608. That's 121 points in a day. So it's quite a large leap. Not so great for the New Zealand dollar, though. It's been hit by anticipated rate hike in the United States. The U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates overnight, so we'll find out about that in the morning. Our dollar is at 71.8 US cents, 93.2 Australian, and 51.2 pence. What a day.
What a day. Thank you very much, Nona Peltier there with business. And let's go to the weather now with Met Service meteorologist John Law. Kia ora, John.
Kia ora. As we head into Thursday, we are going to find rain making its way northwards up the country. But for the far northern parts of New Zealand, it's not a bad story. Still perhaps an isolated shower running towards parts of Northland and Auckland, but generally just a bit more cloud to watch out for. Top temperatures in Auckland, 24 degrees Celsius. But that rain is moving northwards, reaching places like New Plymouth as we head through the morning time. And could be one or two heavier falls to watch out for as well. To the north of that, just watching out for the cloud thickening up and a few showers to watch out for. But for places south of Taranaki in towards, say, Wellington, it is a cloudy looking day with spells of rain through the daytime, and some of those falls will be quite heavy as well. And it's going to feel cool as well. Highs in Wellington around about 17 degrees Celsius. Similar story across in towards Masterton and up towards Paraparaumu as well. As we head down towards the South Arm, we have got a fair bit of wet weather still with us for parts of the South Arm, in towards Canterbury northwards. That rain will gradually ease as we head through the daytime. A good southerly, though, will make it feel a little bit cooler. Highs in Christchurch, 14 degrees Celsius. It is looking like a bit of a wet day up towards Nelson. That rain is sticking with us through the daytime. So keep an eye on the radar charts. As we head further south, we should find some drier weather returning to parts of Southland and Otago, but feeling cooler with top temperatures in Dunedin, 12 degrees Celsius. That's it from me. This is metservice.com.
Thank you very much, John. And returning to Barack Obama's first visit today. And if you're watching Checkpoint, then the money shot is probably this one. If you're not, it's the 44th President of the United States, arm in arm with John Key on the golf course at Cody Cliffs, with the sea behind them. It's one of the few images we've seen of Barack Obama today, who was whisked up there this morning by helicopter from Auckland after he jetted in late last night. Well, our reporter Lois Williams is near Cody Cliffs and joins us now. Hi Lois, you've been pretty much there all day. What have you seen?
Hi there, Ryan. Well, there's been a lot of gazing out at a beautiful green pastoral landscape and an incredibly green manicured 13th hole of the immaculate Cody Cliffs golf course. Right now, we're just seeing the helicopter taking off, and I think possibly that is the one that's got Barack Obama and Sir John in it. They're heading for the landing, which is another exclusive resort just around the headland there. But yes, what we saw today, apart from the wonderful scenery, was about 1 o'clock. We saw Barack Obama and Sir John Key hold an interview on the 13th hole there, and they played that hole and then departed. He was wearing a very bright teal shirt, and one of the photographers, as you referred to, managed to get a shot of him clapping Sir John around the shoulders. It looked like they were having a very jolly game of golf.
So, Lois, I'm guessing you're not alone by those lovely green fields. Are there many other media there at this one?
Not at the moment. There's just two of us here, but earlier on there was quite a posse, and the security has been very, very tight here. When we arrived this morning, there was a guard at the gate of Cody Cliffs, and they were pretty friendly. They directed us up this maintenance road up behind the golf course that overlooks that 13th hole, and we were allowed to sit here and play this sort of game of a bit like Where's Wally on It's Where's Barry, and stake out Mr. Obama for the day. Yeah. It's been a lovely day for it, though. It's been one of those classic blue and cold Northland days, so it's been a good day.
Great. And he's off to being choppered to the next sort of luxury point. Do you know what he's sort of up to from here on in?
I believe he's staying the night at the landing, as you said, and then I think he's back to Auckland for more meetings, I believe, with the Prime Minister tomorrow.
Thanks very much. That is our reporter Lois Williams, who was there on Obama Watch at Cody Cliffs Golf Course. Well, pressure is mounting on Facebook as authorities in the US and the UK call on it to explain how political research firm Cambridge Analytica gained access to the personal information from 50 million Facebook users. The British-based Cambridge Analytica is reported to have used the data to manipulate and influence voters in the US presidential election and the Brexit vote. Today, its CEO, Alexander Nix, was suspended after he was secretly recorded discussing bribery and entrapment of politicians using prostitutes. Here's the BBC's Simon Jack.
In the information age, personal data is the new currency, and we spend it liberally on social media platforms. How old we are, whether we're in a relationship, what are our political leanings, this could all be gathered and used. Cambridge Analytica is a company which does exactly that, and it's at the centre of a political storm that has rocked some of the biggest companies in the world. It started with an app designed by a British academic which invited Facebook users to do a personality test. 270,000 people downloaded it. It collected personal information on them, their friends' friends, and so on, until it had info on 50 million Facebook users. That data was passed to Cambridge Analytica, which allegedly used it to influence the presidential election in the US using highly targeted messages, a charge denied by the company. The UK's data watchdog said she'd had concerns about the company for some time.
These allegations are very serious. They came to the attention of our office some months ago, and on the 7th of March I issued a demand for information to Cambridge. They did not comply with that, so now I'm moving ahead to seek a warrant so that I can search premises and data.
What we want to know is what is the expertise of the deep digging that you can do to make sure that the people know.
Separately, Cambridge Analytica executives were secretly filmed by Channel 4, seeming to offer advice on how to influence politicians.
These sorts of tactics are very effective. Instantly having video evidence of corruption.
Cambridge Analytica says it has been grossly misrepresented.
Whether this tiny consultancy was really involved in influencing the US presidential election, there's an old adage in digital marketing which says that if the services you're getting are free, then you are the product, served up to advertisers who are convinced that highly targeted messages constructed around detailed personal information really work.
Since the scandal broke, Facebook has seen £50 billion wiped off its value, and the pressure on the company was cranked up today when the Federal Trade Commission announced it will investigate its handling of customer data. It has the power to levy enormous fines. Facebook denies any wrongdoing. So could this be a moment of reckoning for the way our personal data is used?
I think for the first time, things that people suspected have surfaced thanks to the testimony of whistleblowers. Now we're finally seeing that the leaders of these companies are being called to testify in front of parliaments. They're being held to account in the media. Analysts in the financial industry are dumping their stock as a vote of no confidence. This is a real moment where it's going to incentivize change.
The facts of our lives have value. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has built a fortune out of them. He'll have the chance to tell MPs just how safely that information is kept.
That's the BBC's Simon Jack. A giant mouse hunt on one of New Zealand's most remote islands is finally complete. Antipodes Island has been declared officially rid of the 200,000 rodents that once lived there. Mice were probably introduced to the subantarctic island 820 kilometres southeast of New Zealand from a shipwreck or one of the many sealing ships it visited in the 1800s. Their arrival spelled bad news for some wildlife on the island, with 2 insect species wiped out and seabird species forced to breed on other islands. Maya Burry reports.
The $4 million project to get rid of the rodent is considered one of the most complex island eradication projects ever undertaken. Project manager Stephen Horn says the mice were causing problems because they eat invertebrates, prey on bird chicks and eggs, and also eat plant material, including seeds.
The New Zealand Subantarctic Islands are a World Heritage Site, so there's 5 groups. We've only got one group now that has mammalian pests left on it, so these are really the jewels in the conservation crown for us. There's lots and lots of special, unique, endemic species down there, so to free them of introduced pests is, it's massive, it's internationally significant.
Eradication work on Antipodes Island started in 2016 and involved spreading 65 tonnes of poison bait across the island using 2 helicopters. 2 applications of bait were made a fortnight apart to ensure that every mouse on the island had a chance to find and eat some bait. Stephen Horn says after a nerve-wracking 18-month wait, a Department of Conservation team spent the last month checking the island for rodents before returning to Dunedin yesterday, but they didn't find any. He says it took time to be able to officially call the island pest-free.
So in order to have the level of confidence that we have, we waited for effectively 2 mouse breeding seasons so that if there were any survivors, they would have rebounded to numbers that are in the realms of detectability. And so this follow-up work is proven that.
Stephen Horn says it's now hoped special plants and wildlife found on the island will be able to thrive again.
There's been species evolving on that place for hundreds of thousands of years. Mice have been the apex predator for a couple of hundred years, and now we've taken them off and everything can start to get back to recover to what it once was and hopefully forever.
Rodent detecting dogs were used to search the island for any lingering mice. Dog handler Brian Shields says the challenges included the island's remoteness, its size and the difficult terrain.
Quite rugged country to get through and to be able to watch the dog because we're looking for an indication that there's something's out there. The dogs are just part of the tool in the toolbox, a big part of it, and it was tough for them, but they got there.
Stephen Horn says the only New Zealand sub-Antarctic island that isn't pest-free is Auckland Island, which is 23 times larger than Antipodes Island and needs to be cleared of thousands of pigs, cats and mice. He says the department will be drawing from their learnings on Antipodes Island when it comes to tackling that job. For Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
Wellington commuters could soon find themselves with a 4-legged seatmate as the rules are changed to let pets travel on buses. The Regional Council's Sustainable Transport Committee today gave the proposal the green light for off-peak times, as long as Fido or Tiddles are kept in a cage. However, one councillor thinks the idea is barking mad. Anne-Marie May reports.
Domestic pets will be allowed on off-peak services as long as they travel in a cage or some other kind of container. The council's updating its contracts to make the rules the same for commuters, whether they are travelling by bus or train, as it moves towards integrated ticketing. The one dissenting councillor at today's Sustainable Transport Committee meeting, David Ogden, read from a constituent's email raising concerns about the move.
They will poo on the bus, they will bark on the bus, they will run around the bus, they will pee on the bus, and someone will get bitten. Yes, they will sit on seats, yes, there will be problems. And who's going to stop them, Which dogs can go on? The poor bus driver has got enough trouble as it is.
David Ogden says a large number of comments online were also against the proposal and he wanted to reflect that. But the committee chairperson, Barbara Donaldson, says there will be measures to deal with unruly animals.
People can be asked not to get onto the train or the bus or to get off it if the pet is causing a nuisance, maybe barking or sounding aggressive. But it is in its carrier, so actually the things he was talking about can't happen.
And most people spoken to on Lambton Quay gave the proposal the thumbs up.
If people want to be close to their pets, they should be able to take them.
If in the case of dogs, I hope they wouldn't get agitated on the bus.
If it was in a container and it wasn't going to annoy anyone else, some people are scared of dogs.
I think it's a brilliant idea, to be fair. It'd actually be quite cool to sit down next to a dog.
How big are the containers? How long is the bus trip?
I reckon that's good because sometimes it's really hard if you don't have a car to transport your animal.
I think it's a good move. Quite a lot of people have pets and it'd be nice if they're taking their pets to go for a walk somewhere. People's pets are like kids, I guess.
The transporting of domestic pets will be rolled out as new transport contracts are introduced and will be in place in all parts of the Wellington region by the middle of July. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
Genevieve Muskie and Arlene Bashnet don't have the internet, but that hasn't stopped the 103 and 99-year-olds from becoming internet sensations. Videos of the West Virginia sisters, who go by the names Grandma and Ginga, bickering went viral after Genevieve's grandson Frank Fumich started posting them on Facebook 3 years ago. He's since set up their own Facebook page, which has 900,000 followers from around the world. We called them on Skype today to say happy birthday, a day before Grandma turns 104. Despite appearing on talk shows such as Jimmy Kimmel and Little Big Shots, the sisters live a simple life. I asked younger sister Ginga why she thinks she's so popular online.
Why do they like me? Well,
just because you like them.
I'm always happy, and I'm always smiling, and I always have nice things to say. I just have a good time. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I have a wonderful time. I love people. I love animals, and I love to dance.
Do you feel old?
No, I feel the same. I don't see anything any difference. Only I don't know. I feel good. I don't feel 99.
Grandma, a lot of what people seem to like is the way you two are with each other. Do you think how do you feel about your sister?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I like to knock her over.
She always tells me, shut up.
Yeah.
So
we get into it. We get into it sometimes.
So sibling rivalry stays forever.
I used to drive her around all the time, and she'd try to tell me what way to go. And I'd say, why don't you kiss my ass? I know where I'm going. I said, I always go this way. She said, well, you go the other way if you want to. And I'd say, well, why don't you shut up? Maybe you'd like to drive.
I'd try to give a short way cut, to make it easier. She wouldn't listen to me. And lots of times it'd make me mad. We'd be driving, and I'd be talking to her. All at once her car would stop. I said, Arlena, what the hell are you stopping this car for? I said, someone's going to hit you right in the ass. I said, can't you listen without stopping your car when you're driving? Yeah.
Well, I have to stop so I can listen.
So she can listen. She's not thinking about the guy behind her. It makes me mad and it makes me nervous.
Grandma, what's better about life in 2018 than in the old days?
Oh, I like it now better.
Why?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. Things are different. Things are better. Life is better.
More comfortable.
I can remember when we were little, we didn't have everything we wanted. We always had food, but we didn't have the clothes we'd like to have and our shoes. My mother used to patch our toes, our stockings, and I'd say, Ma, I said, they hurt my heel. They hurt me. They hurt me. She couldn't do nothing about it. She couldn't afford to buy me new ones. I know the bad days when you didn't have everything. See? But now, don't want for nothing. God's good to us.
Ginga, how do you stay so young?
How do I?
Walking around
and
volunteering.
I have a good time volunteering, and especially there at the United when I take them in the car, and they'll look at me and they'll say, "Are you Ginga?" And I say, "Yes." They said, "Well, would you take a picture with me?" I said, "Sure." So we'd take a picture together. I'd be walking down the hall, and one of those nurses run up to me and say, "Hey, Ginga, how about a picture?" Okay. So we had I always have a nice time with all those nurses. They hug me, and some of them will take my cards when I have, like, say, 41, 35. They'll say, "Give them to me, Ginga. We'll take them way down there for you." So they would. And I push the wheelchair. I really have a good time.
And what about you, Grandma? What would be your top tip for looking so great, you know, after 100 years on the planet?
I'll tell you, I never drank, I never smoked, and I never took medicine all my life. Those are the three things I think helped me live as long as I have.
See, she didn't have a good time like I did. I like to go.
I didn't run around. I had a good time. I stayed home.
I've had a lovely time.
And if you want to, if you were listening to that story, you can go and take a look at the very inspirational Grandma and Ginga on our Checkpoint Facebook page. Well, I've got a bit of feedback now about the pets on buses. Mark says allowing dogs on buses is a breath of fresh air, and I hope the same change is made in Auckland where I live. And another texter says, cool, with my pit bull beside me, I'll always get a seat. Shane Jones joins us after 6, but here is Anna Thomas now with the news.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The Cabinet Minister Shane Jones is unapologetic for his scathing comments about Air New Zealand, but he does accept he has no authority to remove any member of the board. He's been told by the Prime Minister he went too far when indicating the chair and other board members should be sacked. Mr Jones says his comments have since undergone some refinement, but he's not resigning from his criticisms of the airline.
I accept what the Prime Minister said. I don't have the authority to bring into being the disappearance of the chairman or anyone on the board, but if anyone on that board believes that they're going to muzzle me as a champion for the provinces, then they are sadly mistaken.
Shane Jones says he sees no problem attending tomorrow's dinner for President Barack Obama, being co-hosted by Air New Zealand. A report by the Animal Law Association says rodeos are illegal and must be banned. The 92-paper report by lawyer Katrina McLennan says rodeos are inconsistent with the Animal Welfare Act and therefore illegal, regardless of any exceptions set out by the Rodeo Code of Welfare. Her assessment matches a 2015 Internal Ministry for Primary Industries memo that said rodeos could be prosecuted if it wasn't for the Rodeo Code of Welfare. Ms McLennan is calling on the government to adhere to the law and ban rodeos. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says the report is a stunt and that rodeos are not illegal and do not harm animals. The Associate Minister of Agriculture, Mika Whaitiri, is receiving the report at Parliament about now. The chair of Fonterra says the dairy cooperative's $348 million loss has nothing to do with the chief executive's departure. John Wilson made the announcement that Teo Spearings will step down later in the year at a news conference this morning, called to talk about the half-year loss. But a share milker in Gordonton in Waikato, Lee Holman, says the losses are disappointing and must have played a part in Mr Spearings' departure.
Probably had his hand forced, even though that's not what they have said in the announcement. It's, you know, a huge loss for the dairy farmers to lose that sort of amount of profit.
Waikato share milker Lee Holman. The former President of the United States, Barack Obama, spent his first day in New Zealand playing golf with Sir John Key at a luxury course in Northland. President Obama arrived in the country at midnight and travelled by helicopter this morning to play at Kauri Cliffs Golf Course in Matauri Bay. An Auckland Westpac rescue helicopter crew member, Artie Wynyard, says it was quite something to see the former president asking the helicopter pilot which seat he should sit in.
And that was quite funny for us to see that from probably one of the most powerful men in the world, and you kind of think that he'd be able to just jump in where he wants.
President Obama is expected to stay in the Bay of Islands tonight before returning to Auckland tomorrow for an official welcome led by Ngāti Whātua at Government House. Another group is claiming to have been spied on by the security firm Thompson and Clark. Last week it was revealed the company had been hired by state-owned claims settlement agency Southern Response to spy on quake claimants and at least one lawyer in Christchurch. Greenpeace then said the firm had been hired by the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment to monitor its activities as well. Now, Oil Free Wellington says a series of emails between the ministry and the firm reveal its activities have also been monitored. A spokesperson, Francis Mountier, says it's clear the ministry has a close working relationship with the company, judging by the sheer number of emails exchanged and the joking and familiar tone adopted in them. The ministry maintains it hasn't used the firm's services since 2013. A British-based company accused of misusing Facebook information for political gain has suspended its chief executive after footage emerged of him talking about his role in influencing politicians. Cambridge Analytica says recent comments secretly recorded by Channel 4 News in Britain of its chief executive, Alexander Nix, did not reflect the firm's values. Channel 4 News posed as a Sri Lankan businessman who wanted to influence an election. In the clip, Mr. Nix is heard telling them about the company's role in the US election.
Have you met Mr. Trump?
Many times.
You have?
We did all the research, all the data, all the analytics, all the targeting. We ran all the digital campaign, the television campaign, and our data informed all the strategy.
That was Alexander Nix talking in a clip from Channel 4 News. It's 6:05. The Silver Ferns netballers are aiming to start their last competition before the Commonwealth Games in positive fashion tonight. Coming off a disappointing 2017, New Zealand faced Malawi in their opening match of the Tiny Jameson Trophy on the North Shore. The match is scheduled to start just after 8. A leading British boxing pundit believes there is no doubt Joseph Parker is a better boxer than Anthony Joshua. English superstar Joshua is favoured to prevail when he meets New Zealand fighter Parker in their world heavyweight title unification bout in Cardiff on Easter Sunday. But the respected boxing commentator and analyst Steve Bunce says Parker has an advantage in one crucial area.
He's managed to get an awful lot of rounds. All 3 of his world title fights have gone the 12 rounds. He'd done 12 rounds before that. And some of those weren't necessarily that easy. Some of those he had to think. Sure, Joshua's bashed and smashed people up, but the better professional boxer right now, not the most explosive, not the most popular, the better professional boxer, without a doubt, Parker.
British boxing pundit Steve Bunce. And New Zealand have confirmed 2 changes to their starting 11 for the day-night cricket test against England, which begins in Auckland tomorrow. Wicket-keeper BJ Watling makes his return from injury, while the other change from the second test against the West Indies in December is leg spinner Todd Astle, who is in for the injured Mitchell Santner. Veteran batsman Ross Taylor has been past fit to play. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Bernard Tian on a great New Zealand social experiment licensing trusts selling booze to raise money for charity. And we have a window on the world of Mongolian singer Aryambata Ganbata, who hails from a place known for this, but now excels at this.
And on Lately at 10, we'll have an eye on books, music, people and politics. And of course, we'll be there for the breaking news stories as they happen. We're live and we'll be keeping you up to date with the world, talking to some of the people who have made the news or are just worth talking to. That's Lately with Karen Hay on Nights with Brian Crump on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Gisborne. Fine spells and isolated showers. Waitomara Taupo, Taihape and Hawke's Bay. Areas of cloud, a few showers, especially about the ranges during the afternoons and evenings, and some heavy. Taranaki to Wellington, also wided up, scattered showers, mainly north of Wellington. Some will be heavy. There'll be periods of rain tomorrow and it will also be heavy at times. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine, cloud and the odd shower about Nelson and the Sounds. Periods of rain tomorrow, which will be heavy at times. Canterbury and Otago, excluding Clutha, also Buller and Westland. Occasional rain, heavy at times with snow, lowering to 900 metres about Canterbury and Otago overnight. Clutha and Southland, rain with heavy falls possible, turning to showers tonight. Fiordland, rain clearing and becoming fine this evening. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells with a chance of a shower. RNZ National, it is 8 minutes past 6 and you're listening to Checkpoint with Rowan Quinn.
Thanks, Anna. Well, the Cabinet Minister Shane Jones has had a ticking off from the Prime Minister after he called for the chair of Air New Zealand to be sacked. The New Zealand First MP put Air New Zealand's board on notice this morning amid an escalating political row over the national carrier's decision to axe some regional routes. But Jacinda Ardern says suggesting anyone from the board should go is a step too far. And Shane Jones joins us now. Evening, Mr Jones. What exactly did the Prime Minister say to you?
Oh no, she's made it very clear, and obviously I agree with her that whilst my views are very pronounced and I'm a proven champion for the provinces, I'm not a political greenhorn. The reality is I have no authority whatsoever to effect a change of personnel at the level of the board, but in my view I've successfully raised the issue. My whole phone system, my office is clogged with tales of woe about the degraded services in the provinces from our national carrier.
So you're now happy for Tony Carter to stay on as chair?
I'm not sure when the next opportunity arises for shareholders to change the membership of Air New Zealand board. I think someone advised me today it was in September. But look, I acknowledge that those decisions will be mediated through Treasury. They will be under the leadership of the Minister of Finance. But the Minister of Finance will be under absolutely no illusion as to the strength of feeling both in the provinces and the ability that I've shown to mobilise opinion about something that is egregiously wrong.
But you're now happy for Air New Zealand's chair Tony Carter to stay?
Yeah, look, this is never a personal thing against any individual, although my language is characteristically colourful and robust. But I lead with my chin, and I expect to be thumped back once or thrice. I've said what I've said about the board. I'm actually imagining some of them will be there tomorrow night when I go to Obama's speech. An invitee from the bank, a bank that I've had a long relationship with, the Westpac Bank.
But nonetheless, it is an Air New Zealand do. You know, why are you still going? You've been criticising them all week.
But I am a proud, full-blooded, provincial, 58-year-old Dalmatian Maori from Kaitaia, and no one is going to deter me from going to a do where they are a 52% owned entity that have contributed considerable amounts of money towards the Obama visit. I'm a graduate of an American university. I'm a former chair of the New Zealand Parliamentary American Friendship Group. There's nothing hypocritical about it at all, and I'm particularly grateful to Westpac. It's the first time I've ever received anything like this from them, given the large amount of money I've paid in mortgage fees over the years.
But, you know, we talk a lot about optics these days, and are you not worried about how it would look to those regional towns that you say you're championing, that you're now cozying up to the corporate Taniwha?
No, I don't think it's fair to say just because that I'm born and bred in Awanui, north of Kaitaia, and I have the blood of the provinces coursing through my veins, that I can't stand up and say I'm one of the few lads from Awanui that won a fellowship, went away and got a degree from Harvard University, and it came back home and served my people. I'm not a second-class citizen to the rarefied occupants of the Air New Zealand board.
Nevertheless, I guess it could be a slightly awkward dinner. You know, you've been picking over all the faults of the host all week, and you know you're going to come face to face with them. Are you expecting a few awkward moments?
Well, I spent 3 years as a diplomat in the Pacific. One wouldn't think so after the last several days, but I've got various arrows in my quiver. And I'm not going there to be personally disruptive. I think that the senior people at Air New Zealand know that I'm a robust politician. My party is New Zealand First, and the name New Zealand in the term Air New Zealand needs to be first and foremost in the minds of the board, in particular the provinces. They've heard me
I think that I'll celebrate my Croatian ancestry by drinking gallons of red wine with them.
And given the Prime Minister's comments today about you going a little bit too far with the calls for the resignation, is tomorrow night, is the dinner a chance to apologise to the chair, Tony Carter, or to Christopher Luxton?
Oh, look, both of them are tough, robust businessmen. I do my job for love, whilst there's a little bit of love, I'm sure, in the demeanour of the CEO. The reality is both of them work for money, and they will say that Air New Zealand has its $5 billion enterprise. We should be obviously proud that we have a solvent airline. I've always said all along, let it be an airline that is innovative, imaginative and capable of meeting the needs of all of the provinces. And if there's any awkwardness tomorrow, I can assure you, in the midst of such an amazing international visitor, the former President of the United States of America, Obama, my presence will be akin to an insect arriving amongst a swarm of other members of the animal kingdom.
Mr. Jones, do you get free Koru Club membership?
Yes, I have been ever since I was a businessman. I have been a Koru member for a long, long time. But I must say I don't actually use it a great deal because I'm often running late to catch all my flights.
Is it something you might relinquish in protest now, given your comments this week?
No, when I had a stoush with Countdown, I wasn't allowed to go shopping. So people have advised me today, because of my stoush with Air New Zealand, perhaps I should spend more time driving and less time flying.
And I'll just ask you again, perhaps not at the dinner tomorrow, but are you going to apologise to the chair of Air New Zealand, Tony Carter?
Well, these are not matters that need to be catastrophised. I mean, Tony Carter is a robust figure. I mean, the man, for goodness sake, is a member of the Fletcher's Building Board. And the Fletcher's Building Board's been through its level of woe. I've lost count, about $1 billion of red ink, so he's no stranger to tough situations.
Look, thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you. That is the Regional Economic Development Minister, Shane Jones. Well, we've spoken to Air Chatham's today, and it says its routes from Auckland to Whakatane and Auckland to Whanganui are only running at 60 to 70% capacity. So I guess the question is, and we welcome your feedback, why can you blame Air New Zealand for pulling out? Well, rodeos are against the law and must therefore be banned, according to a new report released this evening by the Animal Law Association. The 92-page report is the first time the legality of rodeos in New Zealand has been comprehensively examined, rather than the usual debate about whether they're ethical. The lawyer and report author, Katrina McLennan, says no legislative change is needed because rodeos are already in breach of the Animal Welfare Act.
Our main animal law is the Animal Welfare Act, and that sets the basic principles and fundamentals for how animals are to be treated. And that includes the 5 freedoms, which probably listeners will be quite familiar with, that animals have to be given food, shelter, water, opportunities to display natural behaviour. It also bans ill-treating animals, and it creates a number of offences. And trying not to be too lawyerly, but under acts there can be made regulations and codes, and people will probably be familiar that it's actually codes for animals. So we have the Rodeo Code, and what the Rodeo Code does is runs completely contrary to the Act, and it allows the use of electric prods and flank straps and spurs and ropes being thrown around young calves' necks and young calves being slammed onto the ground. And if you look at the main Act, it's quite clear that all of that is contrary to and banned by the main Act. And because the Act is the supreme piece of law, you can't have codes that permit things the Act doesn't permit. We just can't do that in our law. And I think Parliament, the government, the Ministry for Primary Industries and the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee need to look at this and take steps to remedy this, because you just can't have non-adherence to the law.
And Ms McLennan's assessment also matches a 2015 Internal Ministry for Primary Industries memo that said rodeos could be prosecuted if it wasn't for the Rodeo Code of Welfare. So earlier today we put that to the Associate Minister for Agriculture, Meka Whaitiri, who's right now receiving the report at Parliament. She earlier this month said she wasn't looking at banning rodeos, but does the report change anything for her?
I've flicked through it. But I'm obviously getting my officials to analyse it much more deeper and to make sure that any recommendations I've built in it are taken on board by my National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, who are working on specific issues around rodeos.
Yeah, it is very long, 92 pages. No one would have expected you to read it through in detail yet. But so you are taking, I guess, putting it through for legal advice to see if their analysis of the law is correct?
No, not just legal advice, just in terms of obviously the recommendations are raised through their own analysis and seeing whether it obviously can enhance the directive I've given to officials specifically around rodeo practices. And so that's the level that we're, wanting to make sure that the authors have been heard in terms of the concerns and that we are actively taking on board some of the recommendations. But again, it needs to go through my officials to make sure that we are lining up with the addressing of those really critical issues around rodeo practices that I've already identified.
One of the things they pointed to in this report is a changing of what they believe, a changing of public opinion, and that they believe that the majority of the New Zealand public now opposes rodeos. If we can put aside whether that's true or not, does public opinion matter to you?
Oh, look, on a lot of the issues, and this one will be no different, but for me it's a balancing approach in terms of 65,000 people have obviously signed the petition that's calling for the banning on one side and very strong advocates for the banning of them. Then I've got to balance that across the 100 or so thousand attendees and their families in small communities throughout New Zealand who attend rodeos. And so no one's saying that this isn't a contentious issue. I've just come out starting with a starting point around saying at this point I will not be banning rodeos, but I am getting down to the heart of the practices in rodeos that seems to cause a lot of concern, and I'll be getting a report in May.
Are we expecting a response, an official response to this report in May, or could that be a bit later?
Oh no! Look, I would actually ensure that my officials respond fully to the report that's going to be tabled tonight. Whether it's before or approximately around May, we'll try and work that detail out, but rest assured there will be a full response from the government on it.
Well, two of New Zealand's most high-profile prisoners have had their day in court today. Arthur Taylor and Philip John Smith have taken the Department of Corrections to the High Court in Auckland, alleging a strip search at Paremoremo of more than 200 prisoners was unlawful. Smith questioned a senior prison staffer, and Taylor told the court there were no grounds to search any of the inmates. Our reporter Laura Tupou has been following the case.
An attack on two officers by four maximum security inmates on the 19th of October 2016 prompted a strip search of 209 prisoners over the following 2 days. Prison management said some of the attackers had been drinking homebrew and shanks made from the bracket of a prison-issued television were used. They said strip searching was necessary to find any other weapons or homebrew ingredients. Management believed it was an organised attack and gang-related because 3 of the 4 attackers belonged to the same gang. Resident manager Solomon Nui told Smith the intelligence report for the assault was released in the afternoon of the 21st, 2 days after the event. But some information was flagged at an earlier meeting to discuss the second day of strip searching.
The intelligence officer gave an indication that the theory of the gangs being involved is not supported.
I see. And that was in the morning?
Yes.
In light of that, Smith then asked why the strip search went ahead.
Because the risk still existed that it was gang-related.
When Crown lawyer Kate Lawrenson asked about the risks, Mr Nui said there were members of that gang everywhere who wanted to make names for themselves. Mr Nui said after the attack, all the blocks in the East Division were locked down, starting with the kitchen.
Because the kitchen has access to all the units, and they can pass things through meal trays. So we don't know if things have been passed through the meal trays from A block to C block, or A block to D block, or A block to B block.
You don't know?
No.
You didn't have any specific intelligence or other information about that?
No.
So it was just a hunch?
Yes.
Strip searches started in C block where the attack took place and D block, and then on October the 21st strip searches of A and B block as well as the special treatment unit. Justice Peters asked what the strip searches uncovered. Mr Nui said there wasn't much, but he would have to look it up. Acting Principal Corrections Officer Marinus Bukes, who personally undertook some strip searches, was also questioned whether anything was found. He said he had not personally found anything. In closing, Arthur Taylor says there were no reasonable grounds for anyone to be strip searched.
Looking for stolen property, for instance. You don't go authorising the search of all the houses that are adjacent to that property that you haven't got evidence in respect of.
Taylor and Smith said it breached the Bill of Rights and the Corrections Act because prisoners were not treated with humanity, their privacy was not respected, and there were no reasonable grounds for believing all 209 prisoners had unauthorised items. In defence, Crown lawyer Peter Gunn said it was lawful and proportional because of the serious nature of the initial attack.
The strip search of the plaintiffs was undertaken to detect prohibited items following the assault and to ensure the safety and security of staff and prisoners.
Mr Gunn said Taylor and Smith, who were also strip searched, both had access to the prison-issued televisions and the kitchen. Justice Peters will reserve her judgment. Mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Laura Tūpoaho.
The Auckland suburb of Glen Innes has been through significant change in the past decade. It was once full of state houses, but now the median house price in the East Auckland suburb is more than $1 million. Home Fires is an exhibition in this year's Auckland Arts Festival and will take place in the backyards of locals in Glen Innes. The project offers both locals and the public a chance to reflect on the impact of mass housing redevelopment. Te Manu Kōrehi reporter John Boynton went to the opening of the exhibition.
Amongst the flurry of construction taking place on Fenchurch Street in Glen Innes, two state houses owned by the whānau of Tamatsi Patuwai are staunch reminders of the past. One of the houses is coated in bright green tones, a contrast to the clean white lines of the surrounding new housing developments. Tamatsi Patuwai's parents bought their state home in the 1980s, but he says many of the Māori and Pacific Island whānau who weren't lucky enough to do the same have been forced out of the suburb.
I'm born and bred in this house in Fenchurch Street in Glen Innes, and I've seen all the ups and downs in this Glen Innes sort of neighbourhood experience.
He's now starting to see the makeup of the community change.
We're now seeing these lovely young Pākehā professional families pushing their strollers down the street and walking their dogs, which is new. We didn't have that growing up here. We're seeing these elderly Asian families turn up and walking the streets, and we're seeing different ethnicities turn up, which is really impactful. You know, it's interesting.
The father of four set up the Mad Avenue Community Trust with his wife Vish. Named after the iconic Glen Innes Street, Madeline Avenue, it's a creative research project set up to respond to housing development in the area. Home Fires will include wānanga ritual, art workshops and musical performances.
So I believe that cultural frameworks and artistic frameworks, creative frameworks can help people to heal and to transform situations.
Kura Norman is known around the neighbourhood as Missy and has lived in the area for almost 50 years. She also once lived on Madeline Ave.
When we were living in Madeline Avenue, that was really whānau, because you could leave your doors open, people come over, the kids from next door. You know, it was a community where we were always together.
In the years since housing development, she's been shifted to various state homes in the area. She says although the community has been torn apart, The exhibition will showcase what Glen Innes is all about.
What I'm hoping is that they'll see what a home is, what manaki is, what aroha is, because that's what this whole feel. I mean, when we were growing up, this is what we were doing. We had tons of people in the backyard.
Delina McGregor is another former resident of Madeline Ave and says she's adapting to the changes in the community. However, the adjustment from 3/4 acre sections to terraced housing worries her.
People love our country because of the way that we live and our beautiful whenua. For GI, we don't have, we won't be able to see much grass, I don't think.
She admires the work of Tamati and his partner Vish and says it offers a chance for the community to move the conversation forward.
This is what comes out of it, this kind of stuff, and it brings in the community to see what's going on. And from that, you know, hopefully we still keep tight moving forward.
The Home Fire exhibition runs until Sunday. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko John Boynton ahau.
And that's Checkpoint for this evening. John Campbell's back tomorrow, but thanks for joining us on your radio, your television, online, or however you chose to connect with us today. You can hear highlights in late edition at 10:15 this evening.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Cabinet Minister Shane Jones is unapologetic over his scathing comments about Air New Zealand. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says a report claiming rodeos are illegal and should be banned is a stunt. Another group claims it's been spied on by the security firm Thompson and Clark. And a British company has suspended its chief executive after footage emerged of him talking about his role in influencing US politicians. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Dateline Pacific, covering the major Pacific stories of the day.
They proceeded to torture these men by punching them, kicking them, slapping them. He was aware that no passengers allowed on board. Weather at that time was not good. It was rough weather.
Dateline Pacific, now at 8:15 every weeknight on RNZ National.
And this is Trending Now.